Today, I'm going to share with you my recipe for apple rosemary smoked ribs. I think all ribs benefit from a little time in a brine. A brine is a salty solution used to tenderize tougher cuts of meat. Today, we're going to make a gallon of brine to cover 2 racks of ribs. So, we'll start with 2 quarts of water, 4 fresh sprigs of rosemary, some brown sugar, and an important ingredient in all brines, salt. A 2-to-1 mixture, salt to sugar. So for a gallon, half a cup of salt, 1 cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of pepper, and now our first chance for an apple, we're going to add 1 cup of apple juice to the brine. So all of these ingredients get put together in a pot and boiled for 3 minutes. We'll add ice later to cool it. So let's go over it again. 1/2 cup salt, 1 cup brown sugar, 1 teaspoon pepper, fresh rosemary, 1 cup of apple juice, 2 quarts of water. That is your brine. Now let's talk about the ribs. Ribs come from the butcher, usually with this membrane still intact. It's on the back side of the ribs, the bone side, but it needs to be removed. Take you a butter knife and find you a pocket in the middle and then work your way toward the ends of each of these racks of ribs. This membrane is tough and hard to get off, but it really needs to be removed so that the brine and later the dry rub have a good way to penetrate the meat. Now flip them over and just kind of trim these ribs up. If there's anything that looks a little off, something that won't fit on the smoker quite well, or any little bits of fat need to be trimmed away. Here we are, 2 racks of ribs ready to spend a little time in a nice brine. Now let's talk about the rub. We're going to take a tablespoon of fresh rosemary and add to these other dry ingredients to make a flavorful dry rub. Then, for an extra taste of smoke, we're going to take these soaked chunks of apple wood and add them to the coals of the fire. This will make a really nice apple smoked flavor. So here's your dry rub ingredients. Starting with the cup of sugar, add all of the dry ingredients into a bowl. Take these ingredients and combine them vigorously. I use a fork to try and mash up as many of the bumps of brown sugar as possible. So go to town. Mix this up well. Now, there we go. Now you're starting to get a rub. Now, our ribs have been swimming for 24 hours in this brine. We've taken them out. We've rinsed them off and dried them off. And now we're going to lay them back down again, bone side up. 2 nice trimmed up racks of ribs. So now what we want to do is take our dry rub and spoon it generously over this side of the ribs. Be generous with this, as this is a tougher side of the ribs and requires a little bit of extra love. So put a generous amount of rub and then make sure that you rub it in very, very well. Some people use a prepared mustard to help these spices stick, but I find if you brine them, it works very, very well. So spoon on some extra spice, rub it down really good, flip them over to the meat side up, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take the rest of that dry rub and spoon it generously over the meaty side of the rack of ribs. Cover them generously at this time. Really rub it in. Both racks on the front side should take up almost all of the rest, if not all the rest of the rub. And then rub it in really good. This is where the flavor profile really begins to build. So spend a little time massaging this into the sides of the meat all around. That's where the flavor comes from. The more you rub, the more flavorful these ribs will be. There we go. Now, rubbed in very well. Now you have beautiful racks of ribs ready for the party. They can be covered in aluminum foil, and they can be left out for up to an hour and refrigerated for up to 4 hours. I just set them to the side a little bit, let them sit at room temperature while I go and work on the next part of the flavor profile, the smoke. I like to use a really hardwood charcoal, and I have a very large ceramic smoker. But really, you can use any kind of grill that you want. You just want it to be able to maintain a low temperature of around 225 degrees. We've put on our applewood chunks and the smoke's starting to roll. So now we put these 2 racks of ribs right onto the grill. There we go. Now, ribs. These are going to take 3 hours in their first setting. We'll be turning them 90 degrees every hour. So we're going to close them up. A total of 3 hours cook time here at 225 degrees. Now, after 3 hours, let's hit them with some more flavor. We're going to go back to the kitchen and use a 1/4 cup of apple juice, a tablespoon of butter, and 2 more fresh sprigs of rosemary. Melt the butter in the apple juice. Bring in the 3-hour smoked rib racks and lay them out just like that. Spoon on, brush on. Oh heck, just pour on that melted butter and apple juice. Yeah. Now, 1 fresh sprig of rosemary fits real nice right on the top of that rack. Now what we do is we take this aluminum foil. This is heavy duty aluminum foil. Fold it over very tightly and make a pouch out of it. Roll it right over the top of the rack and seal it good. What we want to do is create a little bit of a steam pouch and let the apple juice and the butter and the rosemary just kind of steam their way back into those ribs. So a nice tight wrap around each rack of ribs, and then they go back to the smoker at 225 for 1 more hour. And then with magic, voila! Here we are, 4 hours of smoke. Beautiful pink. Look at the bark. Pink meat inside. Smoke. I can smell the smoky flavor. Nice crusty bark on the outside. Beautiful meat on the inside. And there you have it. My version of apple rosemary smoked ribs.